Your wife has such a beautiful neck. Tonight on the Peas, last voyage of the Demeter. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of Apple Teeny Plus. I am your host of Apple Teeny Plus, Nick, and I'm joined by the co-host of Apple Teeny Plus, the one, the only, beautiful, amazing, wonderful Brad from the Cinema Guys. Brad, hi.
Hello. This is already more episodes than Apple Teeny has.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be an absolute first for any of you who are 2Ps listeners because no G Money. He is out. He's on vacation, and hopefully he is having an absolutely wonderful vacation with the wife and the kiddos and everything like that. But this is going to be, I've got to take the reins, and I've got to carry this thing here tonight. Brad stepped up to the plate and said, I will join you to do whatever, and rather than punish him with some god-awful mess of nonsense, well, then again, I don't know how he felt about this. We're here to review Last Voyage of the Demeter. Brad, tell us, I know the audience knows who you are, man, but just tell them a little bit about yourself. Besides being the co-host of the, award-winning tons of episodes of Apple TV Plus.
Well, the first ever episode without Gerald. I'm excited that I get to be the one to pop that pea, so to speak. But yes, I mean, listeners know who I am. On the Cinema Guys, I do a lot of stuff with Tubi. Speaking of bad movies, and I'm out there. But we don't need to talk about me. We're here to talk about vampires that don't sparkle and other said things.
Yeah, we're here to talk about the vampire. We're here to talk about Dracula. This is adapted from the Captain's Log chapter, essentially, of Bram Stoker's Dracula. So I was really, and I think we talked about it at the end of last week's episode, but I wasn't 100% sure that that's what it was. That it was like a direct adaptation of that. And then after last week's episode, I just started checking out stuff about this movie and then found that out. So yeah, it actually is adapted from that. But in Bram Stoker's Dracula, which I haven't read the whole thing, I actually did read that chapter today. There's not much in there. There's not much in there because it's basically literally just like the Captain's Log entries and everything. So it really, I don't know, it gave them a playground, I think, and I guess we'll discuss whether or not that playground really was successful or not.
We'll see. I am curious what you thought of this film. Two horror movies 2 weeks in a row.
I know. It's very, very
We know
tough.
how you felt last week, so we'll see.
Oh, my goodness. But before we get there, Brad, there's a little something we do every single week here on the Peas, and that is we're going to ask one big question.
You gotta ask yourself a question.
I have a lot of questions. Number one, how dare you?
I'll never get tired of listening to Kelly Kapoor say that quote. So, Brad, you're the guest, so I want to open up the floor to you and let you hit me with your one big question. Lay it on me, baby.
So after watching this, I thought of this as I was watching the film. This is basically only based off of one chapter of the book, but Universal has tried to reboot their Universal monsters multiple times. We had the Mummy in the 90s. They tried the Mummy again with their Dark Universe they were gonna do, and this to me just felt like they were like, okay, we're not gonna promote it like that. We're gonna kind of softly give you a little Dracula. What other of the Universal properties would you love to see a soft little reboot like this?
Interesting. I mean, really, really interesting question. I would think, God, Frankenstein. Let's just throw let's throw Frankenstein in and give it this kind of treatment. And I mean, that's the thing too. Is do you do the whole thing, or do you take it in bits and pieces? Or exactly what? I don't necessarily know, but yeah. Did you have an answer for that one too?
My thought was actually Frankenstein as well.
Oh,
I mean,
nice.
we haven't really seen the Mummy has been tried multiple times, and we got promised a whole lot more that never happened. So I would love to see a little soft reboot, just maybe something different like what this was, where it's a Dracula. I mean, we'll get into kind of what I thought, but kind of this way. I liked how it was. I don't want to give anything away right now, so
hold that score, baby. Hold that score.
Monster movie.
But you know what would be really, you know what they should do? So instead of rebooting The Mummy, okay, just bring Brendan Fraser back, okay, and just set it, make it a period film. Like, when was the original one set? Like, 19 whatever's? It was after the First World War, I think, right? Yeah. Because like the big dude that piloted the plane was like a pilot in the First World War. So yeah, bring it back. Like, he's much older now, obviously. So set it as a period piece, like in the 50s or 60s, whatever that time frame works out to be. And then they got to bring him in as an expert to help take down some other monster or something like that.
I'd be all for that.
Yeah. Don't try to reboot The Mummy and give it. We want Rick O'Connell back. Just give him back to us. That's all we want.
Yes.
Now this is just going to turn into a Mummy like love cast. Like, that's all this is. Like, we're just going to talk about The Mummy for the rest of the show.
Forget about Demeter. We're going to talk about Brendan Fraser's The Mummy.
Absolutely. So my big question, and I thought about this, and then I was like, wait a minute. Didn't somebody ask this in the fan feedback as well? They did. This was Mr. Jared Taylor, Destruction in Human Form himself. And I couldn't think of a better question, and I'm just going to steal Jared's. Jared, I hope that's okay. But Jared asked, if you could make a movie out of a single chapter from a book, what would it be?
Well, since I don't read a lot of books, Nick, that's a tough question for me.
If you could make a movie out of one segment from a Tubi original.
Man.
That's you could even broaden that question out too, to like take a piece of media. Like, what's a movie with like a small bit of it that you could take out and blow up into like a whole movie? I think that's a fascinating question too. We could probably sit here all night and like think of ideas for that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there are plenty of, I know, talking horror movies with Drew from Real Feels a lot. He'll say this should have been a series. I'm like, yeah, it should have. They could have expanded a lot more of this out if they would have done that. And it's kind of that same concept in a way.
Can we just be fair and say that Drew just needs more movies to watch, and I'm pretty sure that's why Drew would just want it to be a series regardless.
What's the series to kind of fill some time?
Drew just needs more movies to watch. Drew's an absolute soldier. Drew, I love you, man.
Oh, he is. Just when I think I'm doing well, he'll be like, "Oh, I've watched this many." I'm like, "Oh, wow, I haven't watched much." Can I just go with a book that I always want them to make as a movie that I don't think I'll ever get to see?
Yeah, do it.
I would love to see William Gibson's Neuromancer get turned into a movie. Cyberpunk.
I have no idea what that is.
It's my favorite book, and it'll never get made into a movie, but I always hope.
Maybe when you get like super famous, being like the Tubi guy, you could get Tubi to produce the movie.
But I want it to be good.
Ooh. Sad indictment of Tubi.
Not a shot at Tubi. I love bad stuff, but it's a different level. You know what I mean?
Yeah. My goodness gracious. I'm going to cheat with my answer a little bit because it already has been made into a movie technically. And I really, really love the movie for what it is and for its ambition, what it tried to do. I'm going to pick David Mitchell's Cloud Atlas. But I'm going to say I want a movie out of every single chapter, because you could get a movie out of every single chapter in that book. Like, it very famously like unfolds like the first half of each story, like, and then it goes forward through time. In the middle section is the entire end of the world chapter, like after the apocalypse chapter, and then it goes back through the second half of all the other ones. So you finish the book with the same story that you started the book with. I really, really think, honestly, like, you could get some, and I mean, hey, you even have a ship in this one, you have a ship in that one, in the first story there. So I mean, you could really delve into each one of those stories, because they're self-contained stories, each within each other. And then I think the only real failing that the Cloud Atlas movie has is that it just had to cut out too much that I really wanted to see. I would really love to see more of that kind of get developed. So yeah.
And I could say I have not read the book. I've only seen the movie, as you know. We talked about it once. And I could definitely see that because there is a lot. There's a lot in there.
Yeah, there definitely is. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. One big question. Thank you so much, Jared. I'm sorry I had to steal your question, but then, we'll have to pick a different one when we get to the comment section back in the back end of the show. But Brad, it is time to reveal. Now, we're going to do something a little bit special here because G's not here and we miss him. Mm-hmm. And we're just trying to do G proud. Like, that's all we really want to do is just make G proud, or at least not break everything and make all the listeners tune out and never come back. All we're trying to do is
this is the biggest
flag.
Downloaded episode ever, and you're like, well, why do I even need to be here?
Oh. So we're going to reveal our scores with the same thing that we do, the up top score reveal, but then we're also going to guess Gerald's rating. And I texted him. I haven't looked at my phone yet, and hopefully he texts me back. If not, this is going to be a dud on the back end of that. But then we're going to reveal his actual score, assuming he texted it to me, and then we'll know exactly how Gerald felt about the movie as well. So first things first, Brad, are you ready to reveal your score?
I got my score
for
right
last Voyage of the Demeter. I got to find it in here. I went through this book and I just pre-wrote like a whole bunch of scores in here so I didn't have to keep doing it all the time. Okay.
He's flipped to the number.
Okay. All right. So whenever you're ready, 3, 2, 1, pop it up there. 7 out of 10 for me. 8 out of 10
for me.
Woo! Wow! So Gerald, that's 7.5.
We can do the math
for the two-piece score. Ooh, okay. So now we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna guess G's rating. All right. So let me get in here. Hang on. Okay. And 3, 2, 1. I'm gonna guess 8. And you're guessing
7.
You're going to guess
7.5
okay.
again.
All right. So we're flipping that one around here. Now, let me check and see. Did he text me his rating? Wah. No rating from G. No rating from G. So I guess we'll have to wait. I know he'll probably post a review to his Letterboxd at some point. So we'll have to wait and find out what he thinks. And then I'll kind of keep my phone right here just in case it comes through. And we'll reveal his score. We'll reveal his score at that time. Super anticlimactic, Gerald.
Being like a you're gonna open it and be like, ooh, it's a 3. You're gonna be like, oh damn.
Ooh. The funny thing was too is our review last week of Talk to Me. I think we both had the same exact criticisms of the film. I think we basically both said pretty much the same problems that we had with it, but I just found them to be much bigger faults in the film than he did. I found that really fascinating, and I don't know if I've ever quite had that dichotomy in a movie review before, where it was like, yeah, I agree with absolutely everything you're saying, but I'm going to rate this 3 stars higher, or 3 points higher than you, yeah. I don't know. So, again, Last Voyage of the Demeter is based on the Captain's Log chapter from Bram Stoker's Dracula, directed by Andre Øvredal. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. Troll Hunter, I believe, in the filmography there.
Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
All right. And the film stars Corey Hawkins, Ashlyn Franciosi, Liam Cunningham, David Dastmalchian, and a whole host of other randos, and Javier Botet as Dracula. I find it interesting that the movie credited him as Nosferatu and Dracula.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
maybe they're trying to throw people off. I don't know.
We're getting a remake of Nosferatu. Like, is it this year or is it next year? Because isn't what's his face?
Next year.
What's his face is doing it? I can't remember his name now. Robert Eggers. Yep. So yeah, it is. It's Robert Eggers is doing a new adaptation of Nosferatu. No release date on IMDb that I can see. Oh, that's right. Bill Skarsgård is going to be Orlok. Oh, that's
so it'll be an A24 movie. So it's an automatic 9 for Gerald.
Automatic 9. Is Mia Goth in it? Oh, my goodness. So Brad, you're the guest once again. So please lead things off. Non-spoilers at first. We'll crack into the spoilers a little bit later here. But, I mean, if you've read Dracula, you kind of know how this one's going to end. What initial thoughts on Last Voyage of the Demeter?
I mean, as you saw my score, I loved it. I thought it was a great atmospheric, just straight up monster movie.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I loved about it. Like they didn't go too much on one thing. They kept it a lot in the dark and the fears of the dark. And just gave you little pieces as you went along to a few shocking happenings that we'll get into.
Ooh.
That I was surprised to. I was like, oh my gosh, they did this! Wow.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed it, and it's a shame that it's kind of flopping because I would love to see Clement's story continue on.
Not only that, I would love to see Clement's story continue on, but I'm going to even step back in Dracula before this. I'd love to see, with exactly like this caliber, I'd love to see the part 1 of Dracula for this, where, you know, Jonathan Harker goes to Transylvania and all, like, everything that happens in Dracula before this point. I would love to see that. I would really, really love to see that, because I think that this was really, really well done. I think the screenwriter, I read a quote from the screenwriter where they wanted to basically make Alien on a sailing ship. Like, they wanted to turn it into Alien. And I think
there were a lot of Alien 3 vibes to me, the kind of way they did it, where they didn't show you much.
Yeah.
They got pieces.
Yeah. I really, really enjoyed it. Corey Hawkins, like, the only thing I'm familiar with Corey Hawkins from is he did the 24 reboot. Like, when they rebooted 24, and I really liked him in that. I'm kind of sad that didn't kind of continue on from there. I know he played, what was he was in?
Kong Skull Island.
Kong Skull Island, and he was in Straight Outta Compton too, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's probably where most people would know him from. I really liked all the performances in this. I really don't think any of them were necessarily missing anything in any way. I think that all the performances were pretty good. I don't think anybody really stood out. I don't think it was like a super like performance heavy type film, but I think they all did their jobs admirably. There's a couple quibbles I probably have with some of the character writing we'll get into in spoilers, but yeah, overall, I really, really enjoyed this. I really, really had a good time with this.
When I came home, I told my wife, I was like, you should watch this. Like, it's just a straight up monster movie. That's all. I think that's what he wanted to make, and he succeeded.
Yeah. So, all right, let's go ahead and tear down the spoiler wall, brother. I know you said there's a few different things that you wanted to touch on in spoilers that you couldn't believe that they did. I kind of think I have an idea what you're talking about, but yeah, please, the floor is yours, man.
I'm just gonna come right out and say the big shock to me was what they did with the child in the movie.
Right?
I couldn't believe that they not only like killed the child off by Dracula biting him, but then when they're like, you know, his grandfather, who played by Liam Cunningham, people would know from Game of Thrones, when he's, you know, you could just tell he's just hurt. He's like, I saw him move, I saw him breathe, and he didn't want to let him go because they're going to just dump his body. And then they open it up, and then he comes up and bursts into flames because it's the middle of the day. And I'm just like, holy crap, they did this too.
Yep. Yeah.
That was the biggest shock.
That was so good. And then, like, kind of the whole time I'm thinking to myself, because of course I love the god of podcasting. I love Loy Sauce. I see this kid running around on the ship, and the whole time I'm like, I need to channel my inner Loy Sauce. I need to see this kid get bitten. I need to see this kid, like,
and it happens.
Bad, evil, horrible things happen to this kid, and it happens.
And then he bursts into flames, and then they show his body just slowly sinking in the water.
Right? Yeah.
I'm just sitting there like, oh, okay, I'm in. I'm all in on this movie now.
Yeah. Like, I thought, like, a lot of the kills I thought were really, really enjoyable. I love kind of to riff off of that Alien vibe. Like, it kind of makes sense to me. Like, I read that quote after the movie, and then, like, the way that, like, literally they did not show a whole lot of Dracula at all. They really, really kept Dracula in the shadows. And then I love that, like, it's not just a dumb animal. Like, it's Dracula. Dracula is very smart, very cunning. So it would have those moments, like, where when it kills the first guy, the first human that it kills, it's like, like, weak.
Toys with him?
Yeah. It, like, looks like he's, like, really weak and, like, crawling out of there. And then literally just that one leap and the slash of the throat, like, all in that, like, one quick shot. Blood spray everywhere. Like, this is a bloody movie too, folks. If you're, like, bloody, like, messy horror movies, this one's gonna say you real good.
I think it was the second kill where he was like really toying with him when he's climbing up the mast and he repeats what the guy says and just kind of like looking at him before he gets him. I'm like, oh man, he could take any of them out at any moment, and he's just having fun and games right now. Every night he's like, every night I'm gonna do something different.
Yeah, and I love, like, even, like, to kind of get, like, closer to the end of the film, like, they come up with an idea that they can't let the ship reach shore. Like, they got to take the ship down because obviously
they're going to London.
They need to kill this creature. They need to take this ship out. And then, like, as soon as night falls, like, Dracula immediately knows their plan and immediately foils it. And, like, I really, really loved that. Like, they didn't make Dracula into, like, a dumb movie monster. Like, it easily, very easily outsmarted all of these characters, and I love that about it.
And even when they think it's dead, when they like, oh, we got him, because they pinned him and everything else, like, oh, we killed the monster. I'm like, no, you didn't, but okay. Believe what you want.
It's like, well, we know they didn't anyway, because we know that this is only the middle of Dracula. There's still a whole bunch of, you know, the rest of that story that has to be told anyway. But I mean,
even when Dracula bites him and basically kind of turns like the first guy into like a mindless zombie coming after him, and his eyes are white, and he just starts banging his head against the door over and over, trying to break in. I was like, oh my gosh, this movie isn't holding back at all, and I'm loving this.
2 weeks in a row of characters in horror movies that just straight up bash their faces off of things and, like, really, like, just bloody, messy, disgusting, like, horrific. Like, it's a great effect, though.
His eyes just, like, swollen and hanging off, and then they tie him up outside when he's like, it just burns, it burns. And you're thinking, oh, well, he got bit, that's why. And then the sun comes up and he just bursts into flames. You're just like, ooh.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, the thing that I really, really enjoyed about this, I think more than anything else, is, like, the set design and everything. I love this ship. How awesome, like, is that whole set of that ship? Because I was kind of in love with it. Like, I loved hearing all the creaking. Like, the sound design in this film was really, really good as well. But, I mean, this ship looked amazing. I think that, like, for this film to really, really succeed, I think that you really had to kind of nail the aesthetic of the location.
Yeah.
Like, the ship had to almost be kind of a character in the movie in and of itself. And it had to kind of, like, the ship by itself, like an old wooden sailing ship, like, man, like, it's kind of like, even before, like, I mean, obviously Dracula's on it, but I mean, even that notwithstanding, I really think that the great thing about it is how atmospheric the whole thing is with
absolutely.
the ship.
I mean, when they're down below, where you could just tell it's very claustrophobic, because they're always looking back down these narrow hallways, and you just hear the creaks and the you could tell that they're just swaying and moving. And the one scene, I think it was the cook, when he's like, listen, after their animals die, and he makes the comment that there's no rats noise.
Yeah,
there's no rats, you can't hear them. And I was like, oh yeah, there isn't. All you hear is the creaks, because they made sure they showed you the rats and made squeaks and all that before that. But
yeah,
everything was planned out, because I listened to a lot of that. Like, even the score did a very good job of, like, very subtly getting you in the mood as you're going, and then you get the creaks and the claustrophobia, and then a lot of dark shadows, and Dracula would hide in a lot of those, or it would play with their eyes, and they think he was there and turn, and there's nothing.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and speaking of the score, Bear McCreary's score in this is really good, really good. Most of the time when I watch a horror movie like this, the score really doesn't ever jump out at me, and it's just kind of there to, like, set the mood. But this is, like, almost an elevated kind of horror score. I don't know if that makes any sense necessarily, but, like, it stands out to me as something just, like, a little bit more than your traditional horror score.
It did a good job with kind of setting you in the time period, as well as just setting your emotion through everything, because I love that time period, that, you know, done well on screen. It's fascinating to watch. I love, like, the wooden ship, you just think, like, man, they built these to
right?
You know, go across the world and everything. And they make comments in the movie about the metal steamships and all this now, and how they're going to take over, but they're like, no, this old wooden one, and the way they knock, they can knock, and it echoes through the ship, so everybody can hear them. It was so good. I can't wait to watch it again. Honestly, it was.
I really love that that was kind of what they circled back to, like at the very end of the film when Corey Hawkins' character is sitting at the tavern he's at in London or whatever, and then all of a sudden that's all he hears is he just hears that
the tap,
and then it's Dracula's cane like rapping it on the floor, and it's just like, ooh, here we go. Like I'm gonna agree with you. Like I'm kind of really bummed that we're not gonna get to see like. Because I mean, imagine like you could bring in like you could do a sequel to this. You could bring in Van Helsing and like all these different elements, and then it's about these characters trying to hunt Dracula and trying to find Dracula. You know what you could do? This was Alien. Make Aliens out of the part 2 of it, and like really, you got to get like a who's who, not a bad League of Extraordinary Gentlemen style kind of thing, but like you know, you got to assemble like a few different people, like this crew, to go after the beast, to go after the monster, and then it like picks them off one by one, and all these different things. And then there's a Dracula queen that lays eggs. This got away from me. You know?
I mean, he does have his brides. That's what when they were starting to open the other crates and all it was dirt. I was like, is there going to be some big, huge action climax where does he have his brides in these boxes and they're going to come out and go after with him? Like, if I thought it was going to be some big thing, and I'm glad it wasn't.
Yeah,
I'm glad they just stuck to just him. They had the one Anna in. Was she a stowaway or was she in one of the crates?
She was in one of the crates.
Okay.
That was my understanding of it, that she was inside of one of the crates, which I don't think I think that's something that they added to the film. I don't think that's in Dracula. I don't think that's from the original story.
I don't think so either. I know, because I kind of read up on the chapter as Captain's Log, and I'm like, the voiceover pieces I feel like that's from the chapter, and then they kind of just filled everything else in.
Yeah, I really did like and I'm somebody who, as you know, famously, I hate narration in films.
Yes.
But this wasn't narration for that sake. Like, this was literally like the captain reading out the log entries. Like, this is what the captain's recording in the captain's log. That I really, really enjoyed. I actually really thought that was used to really good effect.
And if I had one big complaint with it, I felt like the captain's character just kind of disappeared a little bit for a while, where he was there and then he'd kind of be gone and just kind of pop up. Like, I kind of felt like he was off writing his journal entries at that time, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I would have really liked to see, because I really loved Liam Cunningham's performance in this. I really would have loved to see more of that character, and I think it's disappointing we didn't. Instead, we got a lot more of David Dastmalchian's character, Wojciech.
Yes,
and this is one of the quibbles that I really have with the film is, I mean, aside from like some of the writing of like the other crew members of the ship, is basically they're all just really flat characters. Yeah. One's just a dumb racist, and then the other ones are just weird.
They're all the ones that you're like, okay, you're gonna die.
You're dead. You're dead. You're dead. You're dead. The cannon fodder. But yeah, like they kept kind of focusing on him, and like I think one of the elements of this film that really doesn't work for me, and let me know what you think about it, is kind of like he's got this kind of antagonism with Clemens, with Corey Hawkins' character, and I struggle to see where that came from, because it kind of waxed and waned throughout the film. Like there would be times when they would kind of like be existentially like set against each other a little bit for some reason, and it never felt organic to me. Like, it always felt like you just kind of forced conflict into the movie just to have it.
Yeah, I mean, they had that little bit of conflict when they were trying to bring new crew. They needed 3 crew members, and he went and talked to him and found he's not, like, he's a doctor, and then he's like, oh, well, we don't need that, and they had a little conflict there. But yeah, it kind of, I don't know if he felt like he was going to try to take over because, he got told, this is the last voyage for me from Captain Elliot, and I want you to take over. Like, maybe that was, he felt threatened by Clemens' character. I don't know. I don't know. There really isn't anything in there that really threatened him. He was a doctor. He was doing blood transfusions to try to save this girl, and other things. It
was just like it was just this weird antagonism that he had toward Clemens, and like I said, it just didn't sit right with me. Like, it just never felt really organic, or like it really should have even been part of the film.
Well, that way you could kind of have that turn at the end for him to be like, okay, give me the axe, I'm gonna go.
I mean, that I liked, like that aspect of his character, like not wanting, because obviously he's going to become the captain of the ship once, you know, they reach shore and Elliot retires. And so I liked that it had to be him. Like he was like, no, it's going to be me. I'm going to be the one that takes the ship down. Like that I get. That I like. That works for me. But yeah, the antagonism for me just was not. That was an element that I didn't really like. I mean, speaking of elements I didn't really like, though, I want to get your feelings on this too. Well, aside from, I'm just going to say it, they put a title card up at the beginning of the film that explains like the plot of the film, like where it comes from. It comes from the middle chapter-ish of Dracula. And then it explains like all of the stuff that it then in the next sequence just shows us anyway. Like why put the title card? Why not just show us the opening, like with the ship run aground and they find the captain's log and then it flashes back to the whole story. Why put the title card in there?
It wasn't necessary.
Yeah.
I mean, that little piece, because, you know, they found the ship, they picked up the log and they started reading pieces from the log, and then it cuts to 4 weeks earlier. I'm like, okay, that set us up. We don't need to know. You don't need to know this is part of the Dracula book or anything. Like, just roll with it.
And like I said, it literally basically the title card says everything that you then see in the next scene anyway. And I find it's a real pet peeve of mine when you do redundant filmmaking, when it's like you just and it's telling too. Like you're just telling the audience this information and then you show it to us anyway. But it's film, it's a physical like visual medium. You're already going to show it to us anyway. Why are you bothering to tell us about it? It's pointless to me. Like, so the film didn't really get out of the gate for me, like, really strongly. And I was really worried knowing that it was just based on, like, the single chapter. I was really worried that it was going to be too thin to be able to carry through a whole plot. But I don't think it was.
Some of the characters were, but as you said before, you're like, they're just there. You know they're going to die. Like, that's all they're there for. Like, the cook, he's just there to have a cool scene on the lifeboat.
Yeah, that was a great scene too.
That was an awesome
really
scene.
Really great scene too. I loved that. But I'm going to throw one more kind of thing at you here that I really was not the hugest fan of, and that's Anna. Like that character at all.
Yeah,
because
she felt like she was kind of thrown in there, like to give some backstory of Dracula. Like we don't know who he is or where he's come from.
You're exactly right. And I think that's exactly probably the conversation that the screenwriters were having when they were putting this together. Be like, well, we have to have the characters like talk about the fact that it's Dracula and like all these different things, but none of the characters on the boat would know or anything like that. So it's like, I feel like you're exactly right. They probably just contrived this character out of nowhere and then shoved her into the movie just to basically be an exposition machine to give us like the history and information and all this different stuff about Dracula.
Yeah. So you're like, yeah, he's run our village for years, feeding on all of us. And she's got bite marks all over her body. And like,
which again is we see when Dracula bites, and this is a huge thing that happens in any of these kind of movies with zombies, vampires, anything where they can turn something else into another creature. When they bite you, it's like always dependent on the dramatic needs of the plot, like when they're going to turn into a vampire. But like the whole kind of thing with her character is, how is it that Dracula was feeding off of her so frequently? She's got bite marks literally all over her everywhere. So it's like she's been like almost like this like food bag for him or something, like however you want to refer to it. But like, how does she never turn? Like the film doesn't really ever explain that.
She doesn't turn until the end, until they need it to happen.
Yeah. And then, I mean, like the whole thing, we're seeing the blood transfusions that Clemens is giving to her, and that's that's putting it off. That's staving it off. But like, how she has a lot of bites on her.
Her bites were healed. So they were scarred over. So it was, I mean, they've been there for a while.
Yeah. So it's really, really weird to me. Like that part of it, I was just like, I just don't get like that whole, I didn't like, that just didn't ring true with me, because like I said, he bites the one character, the one crew member, and literally that dude turns within a day.
Quickly.
Yeah.
And the kid, he bites the kid and the kid turns quickly.
Yeah. So yeah, that to me just kind of didn't really, I don't know. Like that one just to me was just a little.
Maybe he bites them differently if he wants them to turn, rather than, you know, she's going to be my meal ticket for a while.
Okay, if And I don't disagree with you. But if that's the case, they're already contriving this character into the film.
None of her bites were on the neck, were they? They were all like,
I think she had one on her neck,
arm, bitten on the shoulder.
I think she had one on the neck too.
Oh, did she?
I think. I could be wrong necessarily, but I mean, again, like the film doesn't really like that. You're going to contrive this character and throw her into the film. Contrive one line of dialogue where she's like, he doesn't bite me like to turn me. He just bites me like where was like the one scene of Clemens being like, you've been bitten before, like based on these scars, how have you not ever turned? And her to be like, he doesn't bite me on the neck so he can keep feeding off of me or whatever. Like you needed one quick exchange to whoosh that away. And we don't ever really get it.
We didn't.
Yeah, I don't really know.
Because I am trying to think if she did have a scar on her neck. I don't think she did, but she may have.
Yeah, I honestly couldn't tell you. But, I mean, nevertheless, final thoughts. Jump into, like, anything else that you want to mention necessarily about Last Voyage of the Demeter.
I mean, first, I know we just spoiled it, but I'm going to say check it out because I love a good monster movie, and this is perfect. The perfect type of monster movie just to sit back and watch. Like it was just so good. And I just like you going in, I was kind of weary because I'm like, okay, it's based off only one chapter of a book.
Mm-hmm.
How is this gonna work? Like some books, you know, you see Harry Potter and stuff like that, you're like, oh my gosh, they cut so much out of these movies compared to the books. And this, you're just like, oh, we're just gonna give you a chapter in 2 hours. It's an hour and 59 minutes. So I'm just like, oh, that scared me too. I was like, oh, they're gonna stretch this to 2 hours, but it worked.
Yeah,
it worked because they didn't give you too much. It gave me enough to keep me like really interested and like, okay, let's keep this going up into this. I mean, a big finale, but it's not like this huge. Like I expected after all of the setup story that the shipwreck with the, you know, the constable and all the other officers there was going to be Dracula was going to pop out and just like slaughter all of them in this huge finale, but that didn't happen. I was kind of bummed about that, but I did. I don't know. I really, really did like this movie quite a lot.
I mean, be realistic, Brad. Like he bought a house. Like he was just trying to get to his house. You know, like he didn't want to slaughter everybody on the shore. He just needed to go to his house.
Real quick, did you like that they kind of still kept that monster almost look to him when he saw him, when he kind of grazed by him in London with his cane and everything? He still had that look to him. Like he didn't look too human.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting choice. I mean, but then I really, really love Nosferatu, and Max Schreck does not look like a human in that either. Like he's definitely a very, like, all of his features are extremely exaggerated. So I kind of like that. That's more the direction they took the character, as opposed to making him like the suave, handsome, sexy vampire that we've gotten in a lot of like those kind of different things as well. I mean, it was definitely like more human looking, I think. I don't think it like
more human than he was in the beginning.
I would think so. Yeah, I would say so. So yeah, I like that. I really did like that.
I mean, he didn't turn into Gary Oldman or anything, which
I've not seen Dracula in like a long time. I really haven't.
And honestly, after watching this, made me want to go back and rewatch Bram Stoker's Dracula. I'm like, ooh, I haven't watched I haven't watched it in a while. I'm like, maybe I need to revisit it.
Mm-hmm. I was really worried, like you said, about the length of the film and about it being based on one chapter, because you mentioned examples like Harry Potter and stuff where they eviscerate stuff. They completely cut tons of stuff out of books when they adapt them. But I've also seen it the other way around, like with the Hunger Games, like the last 2 Hunger Games movies that they did was based on one book. And it was so drawn out because they included literally everything and its mother. You know, there was so much stuff in there. Yeah, The Hobbit's another fantastic example where it was just so drawn out, so stretched out, because they just didn't have the material to really flesh out like
you give us 3 movies out of this much.
Yeah, like that's kind of the thing too. Is like I don't really think as much as I did say earlier in the review that I would really love to see the first part of Dracula like adapted in this style, in this setting, like, even whatever, I would really love that. But at the same time, thinking about the beginning of Dracula, is there enough there to do an entire feature-length movie and then like it ends with Dracula just peacing out, like, I bought a house in London, see ya.
Yeah. I'm getting on a boat. I'll see you guys
kind of
later.
Almost be like a twisted like horror type, like Saw type movie almost, where like Jonathan Harker has to try to like escape this like insane castle with these Dracula's wives and Dracula himself and all these different like terrible, horrible, weird, evil things or something. I mean, I'm a talented enough screenwriter could probably pull it off, but yeah, I would love to see. I really, really, it's a bummer. You're right. It's a bummer that this isn't performing as well as it should. What was the budget on this thing? I didn't even look. Did you check it out?
45 million.
45 million. Yeah.
Unfortunately, it only made a little over 6 the opening weekend.
Yeah, it's gonna struggle to even get to break even point.
Yeah.
At this point, because audiences just aren't going out to see it. Because I think critical reaction in this was actually pretty mixed too. So I'm surprised that we both enjoyed it as much as we did.
I was surprised when I came out going, oh, I love this. Nick's probably going to hate it.
I mean, was it paced perfectly? No, I don't think so. I think there were some parts of the movie that really dragged, especially the first act. I think it took too long spinning its wheels. And like I said, some of the character choices and writing choices I definitely didn't agree with. I'm going to say it, Gerald, you're welcome, but they could have easily probably shaved about 10 minutes out of this movie, especially Anna's character. Like I said, she really doesn't add anything except for just expository backstory for Dracula. I would have even loved it. Like, realistically, think about it this way. Imagine if, like we as an audience obviously know because it's Dracula, it's based on Dracula, but just imagine if they just don't even ever explain what the creature is in the movie. Like, they literally don't ever explain absolutely anything about it, and it's just this killing machine that comes up at night and just starts mowing through people. Like, do we even need the expository stuff about Dracula? Do we even need it?
I think the film would have worked perfectly fine without it.
Yeah. So
then it's just, instead of it's a Dracula monster movie, you're just like, it's a monster movie with this creature.
Yeah.
I mean, you could, if you really needed to put Dracula in it, you could have him say his name or something at the end if you needed that to happen. And then people are like, oh my gosh, it was Dracula this whole time.
Yeah. Almost feels like maybe even that character was like legitimately added for trailers to be put together, like based on just so that way we could have in the trailer there somewhere that one line of dialogue where she's like, his name is Dracula. Like that one line of dialogue, like, so you could put that in a trailer. So then people are going to associate in their brains, ooh, Demeter, Dracula. Like, you hear those names.
Yeah.
If you're familiar enough with Bram Stoker's Dracula, that is, and be able to then associate and be like, oh, okay, this is a retelling of like that portion of the Dracula story. So yeah, I don't know, but 7 out of 10 for me, 8 out of 10 for Brad. That's a combined piece score, Gerald, of 7.5 out of 10. Really, yeah, I'm glad that you enjoyed this as well. I'm glad I enjoyed this. I was,
and the type of stuff I usually like, so
yeah, really, really bad movies.
This is no Underworld, let me tell you.
Oh my goodness, he's gonna make me watch Underworld Part 2, and that'll be up for Cinema Guys patrons at some point whenever we can finally sit down and get that recorded. So at the end of every single episode, Brad, we jump over into the comment section to see what our fans had to say about the movie, or to see what questions they wanted us to answer about the movie or whatever else in general. And did you pick out a question? What do you got over there?
For Nerdrovert, Dan posted it for our friend Jason, aka Nerdrovert, of what's your favorite on-screen depiction of Dracula? So, I want to come right out and say Nicolas Cage's depiction that just came out last year in Reinfeld, but I'm not gonna jump to that. I think my favorite depiction has to be the OG. I mean, the original Dracula from, was it 1930? 6?
I don't know.
When it came out? Hold on. 1931, Bela Lugosi playing Dracula. I think that's still, I mean, that's still iconic. It's still, that's who I would have to go with. Is my favorite Dracula. There have been a lot of good Draculas through the years, like Gary Oldman's Dracula and Bram Stoker's. You have
Christopher
Lee.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's tough, but I got to go with the OG.
That weird bodybuilder male model that played Dracula in Blade Trinity.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. I'm going to go even older than you, Brad, because of course we all know that Nosferatu is basically just a shameless rip-off of Bram Stoker's Dracula. So much so that the film studio got sued by Bram Stoker's estate and by Bram Stoker's wife, and they were ordered to destroy all the prints of the movie. But thankfully, I'm really grateful that it does survive to this day, because Max Schreck as Count Orlok in that movie is legitimately, that is as classic gets with this character. And that leans more into, like, Bela Lugosi leans more into the romantic style of vampire.
Yes.
Whereas what they did in Nosferatu was much more akin to this movie,
monster,
where it's much more of a monster, much more of a creature and everything. I don't necessarily think you will ever, and I mean ever, Bill Skarsgård's got impossible shoes to fill for that new adaptation. I don't think you can ever possibly top Max Orlok.
What about
Max Orlok?
Willem Dafoe playing him in what was that movie? The
Shadow of the Vampire is what it's called.
There we go. Shadow of the Vampire. Willem Dafoe in Shadow of the Vampire.
Yeah. So I mean, I've still never seen that movie. I know conceptually,
Really?
Conceptually what it is and everything like that. Like playing it as if the character was like actually a vampire, like the actor was actually a vampire in the movie. But I've never unfortunately had the chance to check it out.
It's a pretty good movie, actually. I would highly recommend it, and not on a Brad Fest scale of recommend. It's
Oof.
Outside of Bradfest.
Yeah, Max Schreck is Count Orlok in the original. The OG Nosferatu is, for me, for my money, that's always going to be the iconic. And like just that shot of like the shadow going up the stairs, like one of the most iconic shots in all of horror cinema, all of cinema in general. Like you can look at that shot, like most people can look at that shot and immediately just know exactly what it is, what it's from, etc. So yeah.
So you OG'd my OG.
I OG'd your OG. I mean, mine's technically like the rip-off version of the character, but still.
But it on screen it came before.
Yes. Very, very true. Let's see. I'm going to pick. I could pick Brad's question of why am I here?
Why am I here?
We kind of answered a couple of these questions. Like I said, I took Jared's for the one big question at the beginning. Sorry, Jared. And then we kind of answered Jason's other question in the one big question as well. Which monster would you choose and who would play them? If we were making like our own like soft reboot kind of movie, like in this kind of style, we both said Frankenstein. So I think I'm going to take Chris Yaney's question. And thank you so much, Chris, for your support. Thank you all patrons, by the way, for all of your amazing support. We love you. Does the screenwriter have too much leeway when trying to take a book's single chapter and make a feature-length film from it? Brad, I'll yield the floor to you on this one first.
I mean, yes and no. Like, I feel that I think the Captain's Log gave you just enough to where they're like, ooh, we could really have fun and run with this. But with that running, I think they had to keep themselves in check because they could really went wild with it, and like I said, gone completely overboard with like this giant finale with a bunch of vampires and everything else. But I think they kept it in check with this one chapter. They got just enough from that and made just a good monster movie.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you 100%. I think the context of the question depends entirely upon the chapter that the film is being based on and adapted from. I think in terms of this, there's not really much bones to that chapter. It's literally just captain's log entries. That's literally all it is. It doesn't give you any of the context of that voyage and what those sailors went through on that boat. I think in this case, the chapter was vague enough, and the chapter kind of gave you an open playground to just play in that space. I think if it's a much more in-depth chapter, like depending on kind of exactly what the project would be, then I think that it could get a little bit more dangerous. But I think this one, because it basically is just, like I said, it's captain's log entries, and then they just basically had a huge space to play around in, and they did so really, really well. Especially, like I said, the production design, the set design, the sound design, all of the elements, like the technical elements of the construction of this film, are just absolutely note perfect, and they add so much to it.
Yeah,
so good.
I mean, you mentioned about the beginning being a little slow, which it kind of is, but it captured with everything. It captured me enough to really like, okay, I want to see where this is going. What's next? I never had this moment of like, looking at my watch going, it just kept me going and engaged the whole time.
Well, Brad, again, first ever episode of its type. Gerald. We kicked him out of here. We scared him away. We ran him off, and hopefully we didn't break things too badly. But I think we probably did him pretty proud.
I hope so. I really hope so. But we just need to know his score next.
Yeah, he never texted me. So I texted him once and asked about like how to set something up for this, and he responded to that, and then immediately went to enjoy his vacation. So I'm really glad that he's doing that, and that's really great, honestly. So thank you so much for being here. Tell people a little bit more about the Cinema Guys, where they can find you out there, all that fun stuff that you're supposed to do when you're a guest on the podcast.
All that stuff you're supposed to do. Yeah. Well, wearethecinemaguys.com is everything Cinema Guys related, or over on whatever you want to call the social media, Twitter, X Twitter, or go to Threads. You can find me over there where I do Old Man Brad. You can find me at Old Man Brad on Threads and Instagram, or To Be Tuesday on X/Twitter, because someone else already has Old Man Brad
on X. I still don't like. So much of Twitter is tied into like, it's like you tweet things, like I'm tweeting and all this, but now if you change the name of Twitter, I think I posted that in like the patron chat that we have, I'm like, is it like Xing? Are we Xing now?
I don't know what we're doing now. We're just there until it dies.
And I think we just like, are we pronouncing it like, do we pronounce it like an X, or do we pronounce it like a Y like you do in some cases? So are we yeeting, and now we're yeeting on,
or did he change it to 10? We don't know. It could be 10 is what we're on.
Family. All comes back to Fast and the Furious. Yeah, Brad, thank you so much for giving us a little bit of your time to be here on the Cinema Guys. I know you'll be back at some point. You definitely will be back for some terrible, horrible thing.
I'm sure I will. Thank you for letting me fill in Gerald's shoes for a week.
I had to get somebody that was bearded and somebody that also had terrible taste in movies. Even though we were basically like minds on this one, which I also really like enjoyed and everything like that. But I love you. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. Gerald, absolutely. We love you. We miss you. Have fun on your vacation. And Gerald will be back next week, ladies and gentlemen. We spun the roulette wheel. We are going to be watching the absolute masterpiece, Tommy Wiseau's 2003, The Room. Absolutely the greatest bad movie ever made. I got to see it in a theater for the first time ever in June, and it was absolutely one of the greatest theater going experiences of my life. Cannot wait. Gerald's first time ever watching it. I
didn't know Gerald has never seen it.
I know. My mind was blown. Now, he's seen The Disaster Artist, so he knows it.
All right.
But he's never actually sat and really
I'm bummed that he's not gonna be able to see with the crowd, though.
That's the big kicker,
that makes
right?
A difference.
It makes a huge difference. It really does make a huge difference. Gerald, I'm quitting the show if you don't come out of it with a 10 out of 10. Point blank, period.
Well, the P's are over next week, everybody. Be ready.
He's gonna bag it literally the whole time. He's gonna be like, "This is the worst thing I've ever seen. What is wrong with you people?" Oh my goodness. Brad, I love you. Thank you so much for being here. Gerald, we love you. Audience, we love you. This has been 2Ps. Have an absolutely amazing night, everybody, and we'll catch you next time.